Before her family moved from the Philippines to California, a teenage June Millington heard a girl playing guitar at school. Soon after, June and her sister Jean were playing acoustic guitars and ukuleles at variety shows. Before long, they were playing in bands, now with electric guitars. After several personnel changes and band names, the Svelts and Wild Honey, they landed a recording contract. They changed the band name to Fanny. People took notice, including David Bowie, who referred to Fanny as extraordinary, as important as anybody else. Their first time playing a large venue was opening for the Kinks and Procol Harum. Fanny made their mark as a fantastic and much-loved all-female rock group, and June Millington has made her mark. She's artistic director at Institute for the Musical Arts. IMA runs rock and roll performance and recording programs for girls and young women. June recently released a new album, Snaphots. Her autobiography, Land of a Thousand Bridges, Island Girl in a Rock and Roll World, tells her amazing story. I've been a fan for years, and it was great getting to talk with June Millington. You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. June Millington, how are you?
I'm pretty good, actually.
Thanks for doing this.
No problem.
Well, I'm very excited about getting to talk with you. I'm going to go way back to your early life in Manila in the Philippines.
Okay.
There were 7 children in your family?
There were 6 in the Philippines, and then my youngest sister, Sylvia, was born after we moved to Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know a little bit about you and Jean, and I think you started playing piano when you were pretty young.
Yeah, my aunt, who had actually gone to Juilliard by herself, she took a ship from Manila to New York by herself, attended Juilliard, and came back. She married my mother's brother, and because the Philippines is basically matrilocal, they, like my mom and dad, moved into my grandmother and grandfather's compound. So there she was, and I took piano lessons from her, I think from about 5 to 8. Which, oddly enough, she didn't remember, but I was playing little sonatas for the entire family after dinner on Sunday. So, I remember that because it was kind of my first, the first pat on the head for doing music. But I personally didn't think too much of it. I just did it, and apparently I had, a sort of instinct for playing piano, but that was my calling, so.
Were the other siblings musical, or did they play any instruments?
Yeah, I think actually everybody is musical. Sylvia plays the piano. All her kids play something. Everybody kind of picked up guitar or whatever. My youngest brother, Scott, who also does sound, plays piano as well. So I think everybody's musical. Oddly enough, my dad was tone deaf. I noticed when he sang along with stuff, he was completely off, and he didn't know it. But he whistled perfectly on pitch. He was a great whistler.
Well, you played some ukulele, too, in addition to the piano.
Well, the ukulele was our first sort of the wave of passion that we wrote on because it connected us to songs that we heard on the radio, which we picked up really easily. The early kind of rock and roll or rock pop was basically 1-6-4-5 in terms of chords, and so we really picked up on that. And we loved songs like by Harry Belafonte or Everly Brothers, Rick, what's his name? Rick
Nelson.
Yes, I loved
Me
Rick
too.
Nelson. I thought he was so cute, and I loved his songs, etc. So that was the first passion that we actually tuned into together. I mean, before that, we were reading books and fighting over books and that kind of thing. But ukulele and singing songs off the radio was an absolute. It's like we had a crush on American music, right? American pop music.
Well, I think I'm getting this right. You heard At one point, you heard another girl playing a guitar at school. You were a young teenager.
Seventh grade, last year in Manila. Just at the very end of the school year, we were at Assumption, which is a women. Basically, it's Assumption College, but it's for girls and women. And I heard, one of the very last days of school, I heard a girl I'd never seen before. I never saw her again. But I heard this sound coming down the hall, and I followed that sound, which oddly enough, nobody stopped me. It was really weird. It was as if, somebody pressed pause, and I just walked through life. I went and heard this girl down the hall, and I was completely mesmerized. And I was so struck that no one had ever told me about a guitar. No one had even mentioned it. But there it was. I heard it. I never saw that girl again, walked back to my seat, and that was it. I was smitten. I mean, I was even more in love with that sound than I was with the ukulele. I mean, the ukulele was an easy conquest, but guitar, that was harder. It took me like a year to get to my first bar chord, F.
Yeah. Well, if you have that desire to learn guitar, it's a very cool thing to get that first one and start feeling your way around.
Yeah, that's right. You can just fly.
Yeah. Well, not long after you got that guitar, the family moved from the Philippines to Sacramento, California. And
that's right.
How did you feel about making that move to the States?
I was having a hard time in life in the first place. Our mom and dad had been fighting. I got chicken pox actually that year at Assumption, and I almost died. It was really, really bad.
Wow.
So I wasn't having a great time. The biracial thing was kicking in for sure at American school. So although it was hard to leave, the islands and our relatives and the food and all that, I think we felt instinctively that we were heading towards our destiny. We didn't know, but we felt okay about it. Like, maybe something was going to happen for us, kind of thing, but we didn't know what. Because we hadn't heard the Beach Boys yet or Motown. Those were the first real clues to us that, oh, my God, this is like the stairway to heaven.
Well, for years, I think people had a tendency to think racism was mostly confined to certain areas of the U.S., but unfortunately, it's all over. And especially in recent years, we're seeing the scope of it, and it's just awful. But I think when you got to the States, you encountered some of that too.
Yeah, we, both of us, encountered quite a bit, or the family, but I must say that once we got into Gene and I performing, and especially being in a band, and that continued through to Fanny. Our first band was the Svelts, which became Wild Honey, which became Fanny. In thinking back, I realized that every time we got on stage and started to play, people rushed for the dance floor when we were just a dance band. Fanny, of course, had to kind of bridge the gap, with playing material to listen to and also dance music. But once the kids rushed to the dance floor and started dancing, it wasn't just kids, actually. We played a lot of Air Force bases when we started because the Vietnam War was on. So there were a lot of gigs associated with our military. And it's like everybody forgot everything except the joy of the music and the vibe and dancing. So I feel like in those moments we were free of the racism and all the other stuff. And that was really neat to experience. So that was part of the flying. When I was talking about you can fly, it was part of the flying experience where you just flew above it all. We didn't think of it that way, but we knew we were doing it. We knew what it felt like. It felt like freedom.
You do me wrong.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Looking to buy a guitar, an amp, pedals? Find great deals on all of these as well as audio and recording gear at reverb.com. You can also sell your gear through Reverb. They have great articles about music gear and bands. And Reverb believes music makes the world a better place. That's why they created Reverb Gives, that provides youth music education programs all over the world with the instruments they need to make music. Link to Reverb through Frets with DJ Faye in the show notes for this episode. Well, like you said, you and Gene started playing out, and you were playing guitar, singing, at like variety shows and things.
That's right.
And then next thing you know, before long, a friend who played drums started talking to you guys about forming a band.
No, she wasn't a friend. She heard about it.
Okay, all right.
Well, I mean, she became a friend, but she was a girl from a rival high school. And when I say rivals, because our football teams were rivals. And that high school had just finished being built. Like, I heard about the school being built, Hiram Johnson. And then, so out of the blue, she called us. Somebody told her about us, and she was all hot to start a band, and she called us and said, "Hey, I hear you guys are really good. Do you want to start a band?" I mean, just like that.
Wow.
She hadn't heard us, nothing. So we must have had a good reputation. And I picked up the phone, and I looked at Gene, and I mouthed, do you want to start a band? And about 3 seconds later, I turned around and said, yeah, sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Sears Roebuck where your dad took you to get an amp and an electric guitar?
No, it was a pawn shop.
Oh, it was a pawn shop. I got my information wrong there.
Well, I mean, we did. The guitar combo that I got was a Sears and Roebuck combo. So that's the association right there.
I got you.
Which a lot of people actually they got that combo because it was not that expensive, and my dad felt like he could splurge, at the pawn shop and buy me that. And then when we started a band, basically because the Beatles were now on, aside from the Beach Boys, I tried to get George Harrison's rig, and I think Jean did her best to be like Paul McCartney, etc. So they were good role models for us, and of course their sounds were awesome. I got a Gretsch Countryman and a Vox.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, you had played some bass guitar, but then there was a decision had to be made at some point about who would play bass in the band. And the story I heard...
I never played bass.
Oh.
I can play bass now.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Gene and I both played acoustics. We both had acoustic guitars, and we did our gigs that way. And then when Kathy called us and asked us if we wanted to start a band, as she told me, or us, we flipped the coin, and she was pretty pissed that she lost.
Oh.
She had to play bass.
Okay. At the time. I think she got used to it, though.
She got over it, yeah.
Right. Okay, so there was the Svelts. That was one of the first band name, I guess.
Yeah, we were all in the kitchen, and my brother, we were painting the kitchen, actually, when Kathy called us. And then Gene and I started to talk, what are we going to call ourselves? We weren't even on the phone with Kathy anymore. And my brother, I'll never forget, he was standing on a ladder, and he looked down and he said, "How about the Svelts?" And we said, "What? The Svelts? What does that mean?" He said, "I just learned that today. It means lithe and slender, kind of like all positive attributes."
Nice.
So we loved it, and we told Kathy about that name, and she agreed, and that was the name of the band, just like that.
Wow. Well, I'm a big fan of girl groups, not just like female rock groups, but 60s stuff, Shangri-Las, Marvelettes, and Chiffons. You guys played some of that genre along with other covers of stuff, right?
We played it all.
Yeah,
we loved that stuff. Foolish Little Girl. Very few people know that song, but we loved it. I mean, I can play it right now. I just love it. We love the lyrics. They're sort of sung tongue-in-cheek. But we got it, but I love him. No, you don't. It's just your pride that hurt. We would sing it, to each other. We'd be shaking our fingers. No, you don't. It's just your pride that's hurt. And we just crack up. So these songs, they, actually a lot of pop songs are a code for how to get into a relationship, how to act during a relationship, and all that kind of stuff. So we embedded all of that. We did all those songs, believe me, and they were terrific. They had great players on them. They had top-notch players, and New York and also L.A. You know, when you think about Sonny and Cher, you know, they had the Wrecking Crew behind them.
Right.
So, you know, we were learning from the best, but we didn't know it. We just knew that we loved that material, and so did our audiences. They wanted to dance to that.
Right.
You know, as soon as we hit Apples, Peaches, Pumpkin Pie, or Midnight Hour, my God, that's why I named my book. Well, I didn't name it Midnight Hour, but Land of a Thousand Bridges, you know, na, 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 na. You know, dance, what is it, Land of a Thousand Dances?
Yes.
Well, we did that a million times. I can't even tell you. And every time we started it, the audience went crazy, and they would just want us to just keep going and going and going, you know. Wow. Do you love me? I couldn't figure out how anybody wrote that kind of a song, but they were terrific.
Well, I think you mentioned, too, that you guys before becoming Fanny, became Wild Honey.
Yeah, that's because Alice and Addie went off, and I don't know. I didn't even know they went off. I was not feeling good in the band at the time. That was between 67 and 68. And they went off, and I went to UC Berkeley for a quarter. So that was a seminal 68. Early 68 was a very seminal year for me because I was going to UC Berkeley and I saw Jimi Hendrix the first time he played, not in front of the Monkees. He played at the Fillmore. And actually, the Svelts opened up for Sly and the Family Stone in Lake Tahoe at the Teen Center. And, you know, that's why we were friends with Sly and why he would drop by our studio. We were all recording at the same studio at Village. He was, you know, hanging out and doing coke night and day and just recording snippets of stuff. And we were recording in another studio. He'd just come in and, you know, light a joint, sit on the floor and just watch us. Maybe we'd chat. Maybe we wouldn't, you know, but we were working. And he understood that. But watching Find the Family Stone soundcheck was incredible. I mean, I got how good they were, and I got how great Sly was, because I just watched him sit on an amp actually and doodle on a guitar, and it was like, what? Wow. What are you doing? It was just the highest of the high, you know?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I try to find my personality or my identity in the music the best I can. And by the fact that I am such a blues advocate, I mean, you know, usually the interpretation turns out a little bit closer to the blues side, you know. But I just love the music, and I'm just so happy that, you know, people still can find some appreciation for what I do.
That's bluesman Larry McRae, a fine guitarist and a fine singer. My talk with Larry is available on Frets. Hope you'll check it out.
Arkansas, come up feeding hogs and baling straw.
Hi, this is June Millington, and I'm with you on Frets with DJ Faye.
So ultimately, you guys end up in L.A. And
well, that was kind of late summer, early fall of '68. That's part of my seminal year as Wild Honey, and that's when we played an open hoot night at the Troubadour.
And then you got a record deal.
We didn't move to L.A. till '69, by the way, till May '69.
Oh, okay. Well, then you got a record deal.
We did. I mean, Richard Berry's secretary heard us at the Troubadour, where they tried to tell us we could only play for 5 or 15 minutes, and then literally the audience jumped up on the tables. The entire audience jumped up on the tables, and they were, slamming their feet and dancing and screaming, and I mean, it was unbelievable. And I think that was actually the high point of our career. I mean, recording Special Care, Harry Bulldog, and all that stuff, those were really good moments, too. But that night, when the audience recognized us for who we were, not the club, because he was putting us down, whoever was the club manager.
Right.
And he thought we'd, completely fail, people would laugh at us, and we'd get off right away. And he was so wrong.
He was wrong.
Yeah, he was wrong. So his secretary, Richard's secretary, called us out just as we were leaving 2 days later, and I happened to pick up the phone, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're just about to get on the bus to head back home." And she said, No. Yeah, wait for wait for me to call you back. And about, 5 or 10 minutes, she called me back and said, my boss wants to meet you at Wally Hyder Studio, which I don't know if you know where that is or what that is, but it was a small studio in L.A., one of the best, not far from Capitol. So we drove over there and we played for Richard and we hung out with him for about an hour and a half. And so on a verbal promise, he said he was going to get Mo Osborne's Finest, and he did.
Wow. Well, that first self-titled album, Fanny, it got the attention of a lot of people. It's a great record.
Thank you.
And Fanny's first big show, didn't you open up for the Kinks and Procol Harum?
Yeah, at the Santa Monica Civic.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. But, that's a tough role to play, actually. We had a hard time at the sound check because it was so hard to get the balances. But by that time, we had already played many gigs at the Whiskey A Go-Go. I guess you could say we had, what do you call it now when a band plays a lot at a place? There's a certain name for it. And also Warner Brothers had given us a sound stage on the movie lot to record in, which we probably not record in to practice it, and to do private concerts for Warner Brothers and Reprise executives, which was a really smart thing to do. So the whole company was really jangling and all excited about us because we did private catered concerts for them right on the Warner Brothers lot. And playing at those big cavernous studios, for example, Sound of Music, would have been shot in one of those sound stages, a lot of it, or, any big movie you can think of. So we had already shaped our sound at the Whiskey and at the sound stage. And they gave Little Feet a sound stage next to us. They would come over at lunch and hang out. We would also jam at the house. So we had our sound pretty much sculpted and ready to go. That's a really important, detail for people to sort of chew on and recognize.
Yeah.
We didn't just come out of nowhere and play really loud.
Right.
We knew what we were doing.
We mentioned Little Feet. Is it true that Lowell George taught you how to play some of that slide guitar?
Well, he gave me a lot of hints, I can tell you that. And we jammed a lot.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Skunk Baxter?
Not just Skunk was a really good friend. So those guys, I realized that the better the player, the nicer they were. I mean, that was always true as we, sort of climbed the steps in Fanny, because we pretty much played in front of everyone. And the better the players, the nicer they were, was incredible,
Yeah.
And, people like the Staples singers, they totally accepted us. Bob Staples, I found out from Mavis just about 5 or 6 years ago, would, drag her in front of her and say, look at that little girl, she can play.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love going back and not just listening, but watching this. And there's some great old video footage of the Staples singers and pops on guitar, and it's really, really nice stuff.
Yeah, they're some of the best.
I mentioned slide guitar. I can't tell you how many times I've watched the video of Ain't That Peculiar with you just flying on some pretty wicked slide guitar. That is a great piece.
Well, what's interesting is that I don't remember how that came about at all. The secret to us was that we practiced and played all the time. So we were trying stuff out constantly. And the stuff that stuck was the stuff that we obviously concentrated on.
Right.
And that worked out. One of the things I love about Ain't That Peculiar is that Ms. Bobby Hall played on the original with Marvin Gaye percussion, and she did an overdub in L.A. on that, which is, I really love that. I was too shy to really talk to her, but I watched the session, and she really was one of the best.
Well, you not only were a big influence on other female groups like the Runaways and the Go-Go's, but musicians in general took notice of Fanny, like David Bowie. He referred to you as extraordinary, and I know Bowie sang your praises.
Yeah, that's right. He was a big fan. Unabashedly a huge fan.
And speaking of Bowie, your nephew Lee is the son of another great guitarist, Earl Slick, who played with Bowie on quite a few albums and tours.
That's right, and he played on my latest album.
That's right.
Snapshots. Yeah.
Right, which I have.
He and Lee were here sheltering in place when COVID hit. So,
Oh, really?
there for like a year and a half.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Are you a coffee drinker? Peter Cohen, also known as String Bean Pete, offers the finest beans from around the world. Pete roasts in small batches in non-computerized, old-school ways to music, under a disco ball. You heard that right. Pete also plays a mean bass guitar. And he owns and operates String Bean Coffee. He offers many fine roasts and blends, including a decaf option, and now also String Bean Half Calf. Learn more about Pete's story and where to get his great coffee at stringbeancoffee.com.
If you're looking to be found, all your neighbors gone to ground, look around. When you look beneath the veil and your courage starts to fail, look around. State of grace, state of mind, it's always gonna be looking behind. Stay away, coming close, ammunition's running low. Grace.
Well, over the years, you've been a big part of the women's music movement and IMA, the Institute for the Musical Arts, and very active in helping women not only pursue playing music, but also playing a role in music-related occupations and businesses.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is sort of a clearinghouse for women who have had a foot or their feet in the music business pretty much all their lives. It's a place for us to share and mentor and teach, and that's what we do. And the women who, I'm going to say, get to teach here, love it. They just love it. They love the opportunity to pass it on. So it's really great. We are paying it forward.
That's great. I love it. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I still need to watch the documentary Fanny, The Right to Rock. I think it's available now on some streaming channels. I didn't get the opportunity. I know it played on the big screen in some cities, and Bonnie
Well,
Raitt.
you can buy the video now, and it's coming out on PBS next year. So.
Oh, good. I know like Bonnie Raitt's and that, and Kate Pearson of the B-52s, Skunk Baxter, Earl Slick, some of the people we mentioned earlier.
Yep.
What was that experience like, making that documentary?
For me, it was kind of mixed because, it took so long. Some of it went into the COVID period, And, I think Bobby Joe Hart, who directed it and put it together, did a great job. But there's so many ways that you can tell the Fanny story. In this case, a lot of it, because we were just starting to record Fanny Walk the Earth when Bobby Joe stepped into the picture, she was here while we were recording. So a lot of attention was put on, on Bree as the drummer, which is kind of odd to me now when I think about it. It's almost like Alice got eclipsed in some weird way. There was a lot of discussion, with Bree and Bobby Joe about how Bree had been let go, and I don't remember that story the same way that she does, So that's a little bit of a disconnect for me. However, there were so many other parts of the story that Bobby was intent on getting. So I think she did a really great job, and she told a version of Fanny. I was surprised, for example, that our guitar player at the time that Wild Honey played at the Troubadour was not even mentioned.
Oh, wow.
I finally said to Bobby Joe, well, why didn't you, I'll catch you, but, whatever. But, she wanted people who were well-known. I kind of get that. A lot of the, Bonnie, of course, we met early on because we were all on the road at the same time. So, actually, I met Bonnie in Austin. She came to our gig, but I had heard her that afternoon at soundcheck the sound guy put on a record after our sound check, and I just kind of stood there mesmerized. I listened to the whole thing over the speakers, and so I said to him afterwards, who is that? Already has this new artist, this album's just coming out, and I got an advance copy. Her name's Bonnie Raitt. And I thought to myself, man, I got to get that record and, keep up with her. And then that night, in between sets, there was a knock at the door, and it was Bonnie with a couple of guys, wanting to meet us.
Oh, I love that. She's so great.
Yeah,
She's great.
Yeah, so we are bona fide fans of each other.
Yeah. Well, I got my book in the mail the other day, your autobiography. And for the listeners, it's Land of a Thousand Bridges, Island Girl in a Rock and Roll World.
Well, you can get that book at IMA.org. We have a pop down for Land of a Thousand Bridges and Snapshots at IMA.org. And, all the profits go to supporting our programming here. So I love that. Whatever I do, all the money goes to IMA. And I love not even having to think about it or worry about it or whatever. I know it's going to a good place. People are making money off of Fanny now, off of this, that, and the other thing. We don't get anything. So I know that what I do now is going to help future generations, and I'm really happy and proud of that.
That's great.
Well, I am turning Land of a Thousand Bridges into an audiobook, and I've been working on it for quite a few years. And, of course, I have to start and stop because of all the other projects. But I think people will be amazed. I don't know if I'll actually finish it too long before I die because it's so much work, but it's very important. So Land of a Thousand Bridges as an audiobook will at some point be coming out. And I'm working on book 2 right now. So, it's interesting to sit here and think about, well, what do I want to tell people? What do I want to share with people that might be valuable to them? It's not that I want to talk about myself, but I think relating parts of my story and how I work through misogyny, racism, and in the music business, of course, everyone's kind of, it's a competition, so how I've worked through those different phases, I think, like book 1 and relating my years up until 1975, I think it's useful. So I'm working really hard at considering my life and considering what I want to share. I mean, I've already hit. Let's see, I think I'm in 1981. So Lennon has just died, and of course Flick played on Double Fantasy, and Lennon wanted to meet me. So Flick called me up and said, "Hey, come back, because John wants to meet you."
Wow.
Which was kind of a neat moment in my life.
Yeah.
Beatle. I mean, I met all of them before that, the other 3, but he was the only Beatle who made no bones about it. He wanted to meet me.
Wow.
And because he appreciated, a chick. Like now, we'd already met Yoko during the Fanny years, so that was kind of a neat connection. And I just think it's important for people to know the details of how hard it was to work through not just the Fanny years, but women's music and starting IMA and onward. The thing is, you just got to never stop. I have a lot of recordings that I've put out that not a whole lot of people have heard. I mean, they'll be available, or they are available now in different places, but I never stop. That's the thing. And because of my deep fascination with American music, which I studied from the outside. And I think, when you listen to my playing and my songwriting, singing, etc., I think you can feel that because, American music is, I think, arguably the United States' greatest export. It's so important. I've heard stories of soldiers in Afghanistan being bursting through a house, somewhere up in the mountains of Afghanistan, and they're listening to Motown, for example. It's very important. It's an expression of the melting pot and multiculturalism of the United States, and it is really seriously. Aside from, I guess, computers and the software and all that, I think it's arguably our greatest export because it's so important for the soul. I mean, of course, I'm including jazz and, the Carter family, etc. It's incredible. So I've spent my lifetime in studying that, and I'm still studying it, It's so important. And it feeds the soul. I know it feeds my soul.
Wow. I love all that.
Yeah, it's all true. Chris is the person who really turned me on to the Americana part of our legacy of music. And that's why I mentioned the Carter family, because I had already, of course, I was already singing when I met her in 75, and I played on Changer and the Change, but I didn't know, for example, that she was such a Fanny fan that she actually snuck in behind us at Max's Kansas City, New York, pretending to be part of the band because she didn't have the money to get in. She walked from behind us and pretended to be part of the band. I didn't meet her then, but that's one of the connections between us. And for example, we both love Judy Sill. We love loping along through the cosmos and that kind of material.
You there in the corner staring at me. Do you think I'm blowing my cool? Playing the fool. You there in the window staring at me. Do you think
If you're a podcast addict like me, you might have thought about starting your own. I'm having a lot of fun creating and sharing my podcast, Frets with DJ Faye. It seemed daunting at first, and I had no idea how to proceed after recording my first episodes. Then I discovered Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has helped over 100,000 people, even knuckleheads like me, launch a podcast. The tools they provide make it incredibly easy to get your thing going. They'll also help you get your podcast into all the major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and more. You get a great-looking website, audio players to drop into other websites, analytics, and tools to promote your podcast. To get a no-risk free trial of Buzzsprout, or to find out about their low-cost monthly plan options, follow the link in today's show notes and let them know that DJ Faye sent you. Learn the ins and outs of podcasting through people who eat, drink, and breathe it. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast. Now, back to mine. Well, June, you've got the book out. You've got Snapshots as your most recent. You're going to be working on the audiobook version. What else? What's next for you? What's next for June Millington?
I'm working on so many projects simultaneously that, it all seems kind of new and mysterious to me, interestingly enough, although, the beat goes on, right? I mean, talking to you, I do so many interviews. I know that we're playing into the future, right? You and I together, because we're talking now. But it's all new and fresh to me, Next year, the movie's coming out on PBS, and who knows what's going to go on from there. There's no way I can really predict what's going to go on, because I never would have imagined the attention that's being put on Fanny and the attention that's being put on me and Jean and Bree as Filipino Americans. That's really important right now. So I get, like that CBS Saturday morning show that I was on. I was on it because the woman who interviewed me is a Filipino American, and she found out about me and, did a big piece. So I never know what's going to happen, and I look forward to it all. I'm just going to be slammed until I keel over,
Well, we won't worry about we're going to let it all happen organically and just enjoy it all. So.
Absolutely. It's all a huge surprise, and at this point, it's all a wonderful surprise, because I'm not slammed by people criticizing me as they did before, like Queenie Taylor from, this still rubs me the wrong way. She was with the Fillmore organization, and she said in an interview in San Francisco Examiner, one of those papers, that Fanny was a one-trick pony. And that was in the 70s. And that's one of the reasons, I don't know if you know this, but I didn't want to listen to Fanny till the collection, first time in a long time, came out. I would not listen to Fanny. I wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't reference it. I had bad dreams about it. I wanted to forget it as fast as I could and just move on. You know, that's part of the reason why I got so involved in women's music. But then I realized it was Alice, Toshi Regan, Jean, and my mother. Those four women kept trying to get me to listen to Fanny. You know, June, we were really good. You should listen to that. And Toshi goes, why don't you ever talk about Fanny? It's so important. I said, nah, that's all over with, you know. So when the first time in a long time came out in 2002, which, by the way, is the same year that my mom died, I had to listen to all of the reference. They sent us references of everything, you know, all our demos and, you know, different takes and all that. Take 50, Richard presses down the control button. Take 50. And it was, I remember turning to my partner, Ann, at one point after we listened to Young and Dumb, and I said, you know, I always wanted to play like that. I just didn't know I did. And that was, for me, a very honest statement. I didn't know what I was saying. I was just admiring the fact that, my God, I did that. I had no idea. You know, so my pride in Fanny started to build up again. And, of course, with the movie and so on, and so much attention being put on us and our lives, and now Filipino-American and all that, I take a great deal of pride in my life, and that's like huge turning. Well, there isn't one turning point, but there were many turning points that have culminated in that, and that's now where I live. You know, like I'm proud of Fanny, I'm proud of my life, I'm proud of what I've done and what I'm doing, and I want to continue the legacy, you know, of passing whatever we can on, and that's why the IMA archives is so important to me. I mean, people have no idea, because I just would take everything. I walked around with a little cassette, you know. So, well, sometimes I would, like, for example, the band that did Still the One, Orleans, you know, I was living in Woodstock the same time they were, and I would lug around my big 4-track and tape them and whoever else I could, you know. So I've got incredible amount of tapes of music being created, you know. So I love that. I love music so much, and I've hoarded, collected and hoarded music all my life. It turns out I'm kind of like my grandmother, my dad's mom, who was a really good friend of Pete Seeger's, and she was an archivist. In fact, he got all the songs for his first album, Songs of Appalachia, from her. You know, so I actually have it legitimately, but I didn't know really until a couple of years before Pete died. He got in touch with me. You know, I knew your grandmother. So I interviewed him. In fact, if you go on YouTube or if you just, you know, Google June Millington, Pete Seeger, you'll see 10 minutes of my interview with him at his house.
I will definitely look that up.
Yeah.
Well, you've given me and many, many people a lot of enjoyment with your music and your story and everything you've done. I think you've done good things throughout your life. So,
yeah, thank you. And I appreciate people telling me that, like you know, that you get it. You get all the hard work, you know. It's great.
Well, June, thanks so much for doing this. It was really a pleasure, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Yeah, maybe we'll catch up again with each other.
All right.
All right, take care then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Frets with DJ Faye. If you like the show, you can follow or subscribe for free at most podcast platforms. Hope you'll join me again next time. Stay tuned.